This podcast is a part of the More Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Daily Leader Podcast by Pattern Talent, where we interview great leaders and we seek to understand leadership. I'm Brad McDonald.
And I'm Taylor Jessup, and we really hope that you enjoy this episode. All right, man. Brad, here we are.
Here we are.
Here we are, man. We made it, and it's been a little bit since we started this journey.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Are we 12 episodes deep?
We're something like that. I don't know if they're all out there and live yet, but they're in
maybe
there.
Maybe seven released as of today.
That's right.
But we've got a nice little bank of episodes that we've recorded.
Yeah, which is pretty cool.
Excellent.
Pretty cool. For those who don't know, this podcast is called The Daily Leader.
The Daily Leader Podcast.
And, we are super excited to, once again, little cheers to the department.
Thank you, department. Thank you in
Broadcasting
particular,
over here.
Ryan Edson at the department, who has just been a fantastic support to us and a huge encouragement.
It's huge encouragement. We got Jesus, our film guy. Jesus, what's up in the back? Yep, he's giving the peace sign. Nobody knows that, but we do.
Someday we're going to interview Jesus.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to have him here with us.
Yeah, he does all of our video editing needs, all those good things. April
That's
Norris. So a proud producer of our music. Ellery May is one of our many, many sponsors, or just the
She's
first
our
one.
favorite sponsor.
Yeah, she's our favorite sponsor. Yeah, man. Okay, so this is going to be fun. So we're going to do something a little bit different today, right? And this is really coming to us by popular demand. The funny thing is our wives asked us to speak less, but the people have spoken and told us to speak more.
Yes, indeed they have.
Right?
I actually had someone this past weekend say that they wanted to see us kind of do a repeat of the first episode.
Yeah.
Just kind of side by side.
Which is surprising. I was very surprised by that.
I don't know why.
Partially because we've had fantastic guests and that's great.
Yeah.
Like that has been incredible.
That's a great observation. I have been really, really enjoying how much I've been learning just personally.
Oh my gosh.
My own development.
Yeah.
Through these conversations.
Yeah.
So
fire hose. Feels like a fire hose.
Totally.
Just drinking out of it.
And I've listened to each episode probably twice and
Yep.
learned from not only having the initial conversation, but also listening after.
Yeah.
It's been really, really cool for me.
Yeah, no, it's great. But I think that there's so much in there, right? We've learned so much that part of what we wanted to do is do kind of like a recap, right? And
That's right.
so to tickle Brad's fancy here, we are calling this the Leadership Lounge, which will be our recap of all that we've learned, common themes, and some practical applications.
The Leadership Lounge.
Gosh, he hates the name.
Welcome to the
honestly.
Leadership Lounge.
Yeah, it reminded him of Dane Cook, the BK Lounge.
Which we do not endorse, but
Yes.
if you know, you know.
That's true. I think I'm really flexing my dad muscle as the baby's about to come any day. So just anything that is, punny or just not funny, but I'm like, ooh, that's catchy. I'm like, I'm eating.
Look, this is partnership. Partnership is we disagree.
Yeah.
Passionately disagree.
And you can be wrong.
But and indeed, I can be wrong.
Yes.
But I am supportive. I disagree, but I'm
Thank you.
supportive.
That is.
Welcome to the lounge.
Yeah. Welcome to the lounge. We're shortening
The
it.
Leadership Lounge.
Yeah. But we're just going to call it the lounge.
Yep, the lounge.
The Leadership Lounge isn't that catchy. The
And-
lounge. Like, I just want to I want to sit here. I want to have a cigar and I want us to talk about what we've learned.
Yeah.
We're not having a
Yes, you
cigar
do.
today. We have tea. But we
I
can
have
get
tea.
there.
I've got peppermint tea.
I don't think Ryan would let us smoke in here, so we may have to go smoke somewhere else. But I'm good.
That's
with that.
fine.
So the game plan, essentially, right, is hey, every month we will do one of these episodes, and we're going to go back and kind of recap some of our favorite things about each episode, right?
That's right.
And it doesn't always have to be our favorite. We're going to try and make these a little bit more compact. Some of those can be really long. Hope you get through it because there's so many nuggets in there. But these are going to be some of the things that really stuck out in my brain and your brain as we're re-listening, as we've, chatted with people. And then kind of even practically like, hey, are there things that you've been like, oh, I've started to use that?
Totally.
And I can see it helping, right?
Yeah, the other thing I would add to that, Taylor, is just themes and patterns that are repeating.
Yeah.
So that's something that's always fascinating to me. Anytime we talk about leadership, we're talking about it as much as we can contextualized into that guest's experience and perspective.
Yeah.
But what I'm observing is guests repeating some of the same things from their own vantage point. And so I have some observations I want to share with you on that.
You have observations, huh?
I do.
Good.
Indeed.
Good. I love that for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, let's, for those of you, have you ever seen The Princess Bride? If we're going to be, movie quote people, let's go back to the beginning. Vicini said, go back to the beginning. So that's when he's drunk, right? The guy's drunk because he just lost, right? And he goes back, and then they find him, what the big guy, Andre the Giant, finds him, and then is having to dunk, Inigo Montoya, you killed my father, prepare to die. So let's go back to the beginning.
I love it.
Let's do it, man. So episode 1 was us, actually.
It was us, and we were highlighting the tensions of leadership in that episode.
Mm-hmm.
We were kind of talking about the fact that it feels like oftentimes in leadership, you're on a tightrope, and at any given time, you could kind of fall to one side or the other.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this over and over again on different episodes. Those poles to the polar opposites of leadership are what it's all about. It's about the paradoxical nature of both and looking for situations where it's about compromising, it's about balancing, it's about negotiating.
Yeah.
And great leaders know how to do that. They know how to do that really well.
Right. So they don't leverage necessarily too much into one side or the other, right? So if we're looking at, people versus kind of, performance, right? And wanting to focus just on the people side and building relationships, which is all fantastic and really, really great. But if I over-index into that, right? And this is where you put me on the spot, because you, real son of a gun there, I felt the anxiety of it because I had no idea what was coming. But to be put in that position to say, okay, so on one side, we have developing our people and our talent and all those kind of things. And on the other side, we have our performance. What are our KPIs? What does that look like? The tension is, how do I figure that out? And you made me answer a lot of questions of like, which one would you choose if you had to? Truthfully, I think the answer even was woven in with the idea of like, okay, both are needed.
Yep. And it's really a matter of understanding what's needed in what situation.
Sure.
What's needed for the individual person I'm leading, for the circumstances that are at hand.
Yeah.
And great leaders have the ability to kind of read the room and make decisions without forgetting the other side of the conversation. So they can lean into performance without forgetting the priority of people.
Sure.
They can lean into people without forgetting how critical performance is.
Yeah. So it's kind of situational awareness, right?
That's right.
Because there are going to be times when maybe you need to index harder into the people side and the relational side of your business and developing your team. There may also be other times when you got a project or something that's coming up at work and you got to leverage more into the performance side, right? We can't throw the baby out with the bathwater and say like, okay, great. Hey, performance doesn't matter, because we all know that that's not true.
It's not true. It's not sustainable.
Yeah, right. And we don't want to be also those just wishy-washy people that are all like, man, we're really taking it hard in the business. Our bottom line is just killing us, but we've got great relationships. That's fine. But if the great relationships don't produce fruit in your business,
not sustainable.
Yeah, you're kind of out of luck, right?
That's
so,
right.
I really did. I found a lot of things super interesting in that. So one of the things you had me talk about was being or doing.
I love it.
And I'm even going to jump to a later episode than the first 3 episodes that we're going to focus on here. But Will came on and was talking to us in a much later episode 6 or something like that. And he talked about the idea of, like, you proposed the same question, right? Your speed round, being or doing. And he said doing. And he said, man, oftentimes you can do and then you find yourself being, right? That gets you kind of unstuck. I'm not sure that I've completely changed my answer, because I think that being is still really important. I think that we need to figure out who we are.
Yeah.
How do we operate in a spot where, hey, my strengths are on display. I can add value to this company. I can do all those kind of things. But it definitely increased and made me super aware of doing way more. So I'll give you like an example. Like, there are times for me when I think I get stuck. I don't know if you've ever done this, like where I'm like, man, I'm in a crap mood. I feel depressed. I don't feel like doing my work today. I don't feel like whatever. And for me, sometimes I'm like, okay, be, like, just be me, just be me. And I'll sit there and I'll kind of try and be me. And it doesn't help me move, and it doesn't help me get unstuck. But I did realize, hey, if I can get up, I've been cold plunging recently. I can go exercise. I can jump into those emails that I don't want to do. If I can start doing some of those things, sometimes I actually do find the momentum to go, oh, I can be a little bit more myself. So I just found that interesting of like, hey, when I'm getting stuck, like, yes, I would still say for the most part, I'd say, hey, you want to be you, and then your doing will come out of that. But I also think that I learned later on, via one of our guests, Will, like that, oftentimes it may be the other way around. Sometimes, you got to kind of almost fake it before you make it, right? You got to just push yourself to get out there, and then you kind of figure out and fall into that rhythm.
Yeah. And I think it's Alcoholics Anonymous even have a kind of a saying about that, right?
Fake it till you make it. Yeah, that's right.
Is that just straight up the saying? Is fake
that
it till you make it?
That is the saying, yeah.
But the principle, right, is behave the way that you should behave, and your feelings and your mindset will follow.
Act yourself into the feel.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
It's acting yourself into the feel.
I think that there's a lot of leadership that comes down to acting yourself into the feel.
Yeah.
It is doing what you should do in order to demonstrate who you truly are, who you are in your best moments,
right?
Who you are in your potential, even if in the moment, man, you're really having a hard time with that. And so one of the things we talked about in that first episode is like, okay, well, what's the key to that? Well, depending on the moment, the answer could be go on a walk
or take a nap.
Yeah,
right.
And so there are some different things that we dialogued. One of the words that you used in that episode as it related, we used two words that I thought were really important when I was asking you what leadership is.
Yeah.
And you said humility, which has just come up again and again with our guests.
Correct.
And the other thing you said was demonstration, which has come up again and again.
Yeah.
So let's reflect on that a little bit just from episode 1. Like, humility is this critical part of what I would call like long-term sustainable leadership. Now, we can all work for a narcissist or somebody who's super arrogant for a short amount of time.
Sure.
We can put up with that person. But following that person, into the gates of hell with squirt guns is probably not going to happen.
That's good imagery.
Long term.
Yeah.
Right? And then the same thing is true as well. We can follow someone who is kind of a lead way out in front type of leader for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
We can do that, and we can kind of keep pace for a little while.
Yeah.
But many of us will not be able to follow a leader who can't be side by side, kind of in the mud with us, as Howard Schultz says.
Yep.
In the mud with your team.
Yeah.
And I think that you highlighted those two ideas about leadership right as we were talking about the 4 stages of competence.
Mm-hmm.
And so the 4 stages of competence ended up actually being this really cool moment for us too, where unexpectedly we had a video on Instagram do really well.
Yeah, people actually watched it.
Yeah.
Like, what the
and
heck
the
is
way,
going on?
thanks to Jesus, man, for chopping that up the way you did, because I think it really communicated with people the way that you kind of piecemealed that short together.
Yeah.
And we ended up, really spending a lot of time reflecting on the 4 stages of competence. Number 1, because it was blown up and we had to listen to it over and over again every time we checked our notifications.
Yeah.
And then number 2, because people were asking us about it a bunch. So humility and demonstration, any more reflections on that, now 12 weeks in?
No, that's great. Yeah. I mean, so 2 things. 1, I think humility, it has come up over and over and over again. And here's the deal with humility that as you were saying that, I was processing and been thinking about. Humility is simple, but it's not easy.
That's right.
Like you said it really well. Like, humility is the ability to be in the trenches, to be in the mud. Humility is the idea of, I'm never going to ask my team to do something I wouldn't be willing to do myself. And that theme has come out over and over. Shane talked about it, right, on episode 3, and then again on episode 7 or whatever it was. Like, when we said, hey, how do we help our teams get healthy? He was like, well, it starts with me. It starts with me as a leader doing the things that are going to show my team that I'm willing to do whatever it takes with them, right? That's the person that we want to, that's the person that we want to be with.
The way that I've thought about humility is that it's taking a step backward.
Yeah.
Right? From a spiritual standpoint, from an emotional standpoint, from a mindset standpoint, you take a step backward in order to take 2 steps forward.
Yeah. It's soccer. To speak of more things that you don't know about in sports.
I love
or football.
I love doing the seventh inning stretch when I'm playing soccer.
Yeah,
it's always.
If
good.
you haven't seen I think it's Saturday Night Live with what's the comedian's name? He just came on recently, and he does all these things that they're talking about all the American isms. He plays George Washington, and they make fun of like the metric system versus the imperial system, and like how did we even get here? And calling American football. And going through all the rules, and all the founding fathers are like, why are we calling this football? It's fantastic. Anyway, back to the point. The point in soccer is often to move forward, you do have to go backwards. Mm-hmm. So you can press the ball and push it, but it's going to go out of bounds. The other team's going to get it. And oftentimes you have to go back, to which you can kick a through ball, over the top, or get a pass through. And then you have the advantage to like keep pressing forward actually faster than you did before. Mm-hmm. I heard once somebody told me like, hey, I was in the back, I was with the team, I was doing, some work back there, owner of the business, and they had somebody from corporate come up and they're like, hey, you make too much money to be back here doing these kind of things. Like you should really be somewhere else. And I think there was tension in that conversation, because I was like, yeah, I totally understand that point. Mm-hmm. And I just often wonder, is there anything better than we can do than doing the mundane things with our team? Like
that's good.
That they don't want to do, that I don't want to do, to take out the trash. I was told once by a mentor, like never be, how did he phrase it? I never want to be a person that is not willing to just pick up a broom. So
let me add to that real quick. My friend Brent Fielder, hey Brent, if you ever listen to this episode, you're the man. He for a season of his career, he was a Chick-fil-A owner operator, and he's kind of known for saying to his team members, an operator should never wear cufflinks because he needs to roll up his sleeves too often.
Yeah,
and I always have felt like from the time that I heard that saying, man, it was such a great picture of leadership. Mm-hmm. Like there's nothing wrong, with wearing the nice shirt. Yeah. And with playing that role and kind of being the boardroom guy.
Right.
You've got to be able to be that person depending on the situation. But you have to be able to roll up your sleeves quickly. You have to be able to kind of get back to the mud with the team.
Yeah.
And great leaders know when to kind of look at the guy from corporate and say, you're right. I do make great money. I make a lot of money. And I've got to kind of act like the guy who makes the money. But also to be able to look at the team member and to say, hey, I'm here and I'm with you and I feel you, to kind of that Shane, and we'll get to that, Shane Kuyper's definition of leadership I thought was very compelling and very different than anything I'd heard before. And I think he's quoting Simon Sinek or using one of his principles, but man, I thought that was super good.
It is good.
But to kind of circle back for a second, I do think we need to call out one of our biases, which is on the people and performance side. You and I are both generally going to land on...
We're going to be more people.
We're going to land on people.
Sure.
And so one of the things I've noticed is that most of the people, the guests that we've had on our show, have probably shared that same bias. Would you agree with that so far?
Yeah, 100%.
So I think a challenge for us is let's go find some leaders
that's good.
Who are really, really like profit-oriented, performance-oriented, P&L-oriented, high-achieving.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, look, people are, subordinate to the business side of things.
Yeah.
I think we need to kind of find some people like that to talk to, because then we can really press into kind of why this conversation is so important and what some of the varied outcomes are.
Yeah. No, I think we need to have some more guests. I think that's great. That would challenge us in that way, right? Not that people that have come on the show so far haven't challenged us. They've been fantastic. You're right. But often we tend to surround ourselves by what is comfortable. And so maybe we just need to get a little bit more uncomfortable to see if, hey, can we find some people, which there's tons out there, right, that would be on the other side of that coin a little bit and go, okay, let's learn. Yep. I think that'd be great.
And maybe there's one more reflection I would share there, Taylor, which is that idea of paradox, I think has been very important for all of our conversations. We've found ourselves kind of bouncing in between, the two ditches on each side of the conversation we're having.
Sure.
Right. And I think probably the biggest takeaway from my time interviewing these individuals with you has been great leaders are always balancing tensions. They're always integrating things that seem to be opposed.
Yeah.
And they're holding those tensions and they're moving forward, kind of feeling the push and the pull. And that's a lot of the ability to hold on to two seemingly disparate things. This idea that seems to be in conflict with this idea, that is what a leader does. That's the function of a leader.
Yeah.
So those are kind of my reflections, man. I'd love to know
good.
kind of what you saw that I didn't see, or if there's anything else.
No, I think you summed it up really well. You summed it up. That tension, that was illustrated very well. I think that is the hardest part of being a leader, is probably the fact that it's rarely ever black and white, right? Like the black and white is always competing, like you said, and then the answer lies somewhere in the gray. And then inevitably you have to make choices and lead your team.
Yeah. Or if the answer, I mean, sometimes the answer is black and white. Sometimes the decision is clear, but the work that it takes to make that decision or to bring the team to that outcome, it involves a lot of navigating gray areas, tensions, and man, leaders are like, hey, sign me up for that mess. Yeah. That's what makes them so different, such a different animal than all the others.
Yeah. Well, and I just felt like we've had so many guests that have helped me understand that better. Like I think about Josiah in episode 2.
Yeah. Let's get into episode 2. Yeah. Share with me kind of what you're thinking on that one.
One of the things that is great is when you're dealing with a giant problem or opportunity or whatever it has, like that can often be overwhelming. And he talked about the idea of kind of like focus and figuring out the immediate mission.
Man, I love that.
Right? So the idea of focus, I think, is really interesting because like he talked about this, like, hey, here's the idea. Everybody said focus your whole life.
And literally after that conversation, every time I tell my son, 4-year-old son, hey, JJ, focus.
What do you mean in that?
Yeah. I'm like, he has no idea what that word means.
Yeah. Let me just try really hard for a second, Dad.
Yeah.
You know?
It's fascinating. So what I loved about Josiah's perspective on focus was essentially, him asking these two questions. What do I do right now?
Yep.
And then what must I do next?
So let's pick on you for a minute. Now that you have that in your head, so how does that change you trying to get your son to focus?
Yep.
In that example, like what is that? Because I think we have the higher level overview of like people going like, oh, that makes sense. Yep, we said focus, but like, what has that done? How has that helped you?
So the one change is just been when I tell him to focus, I tell him what to focus on.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's been the immediate change, is just I have to be specific about what I'm trying to teach him or show him.
Yeah.
And then I would say, in addition to my son, which has been super helpful, my daughter's not really old enough yet to even tell her to focus. So,
but she is a sweetheart.
She is very cute.
She held my hand a little while ago.
Yeah.
And it was the best night of my life.
Yep.
So
That was very cute.
Love that.
The bigger change has been in my self-talk.
Okay.
Right.
Meaning?
So when I tell myself to focus, I'm getting very specific with myself.
Okay.
So, Brad, focus on this thing, and sometimes even going so far as to say because. So focus on this because once you get this done, then ...
Yeah.
Right. And then I'm framing up for myself, what do I focus on specifically right now? And then also pushing myself towards this is what you'll do next.
Sure. That's
That's been a big change for me, especially on the front end of starting Pattern Talent. This kind of full-time effort.
Yep.
Man, having that verbiage here at the beginning, I feel like is going to be a game changer for me at this time next year.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I think the focus because is super helpful, right? It gives you a practical application of if I want to try and focus better, if I want to try and, I don't know even know if that's right. If I want to actually focus, I need to focus specifically on this, and I need to focus on this because. Like that gives you the why and the motivation behind that.
Yep.
My biggest example of that for myself is actually I play tennis, not well, but I try. And I would do that all the time. I go, okay, focus. And in golf, the same thing. And actually Shane is the one that was telling me like, hey, you don't actually have to focus for 18 holes of golf. you need to focus for just a few seconds intently on what you're trying to focus on, right? So get that window down, focus on this because I need to do, right, my next critical mission.
Oh, that's really good.
Right? So I can get distracted in my focusing. I'm like, okay, I need to focus on this project. And the truth is I do, but in order to actually accomplish that, I need to narrow my focus to the next critical mission. So in tennis, the way that that's played out for me is like, if I'm starting to get off the rails and my serve sucks, which it normally does, I'll take actually like, I'll look at the ball and I'll say pen 1, pen 2, pen 3, pen 4. And I just take that amount of time to breathe, like 1 second, 2, whatever the number is on it, which is real dumb, but it's what I do. And then I think about the serve and what I want to do. And that is kind of like my routine of getting myself into focus for that. And I have seen better consistency on that of that's like, good. I don't need to win this point even. I just need to hit this serve.
So I think what's being highlighted would be maybe one of Josiah's like next steps, which is kill the noise.
Correct.
So tell me what it's been like for you as you've improved upon your ability to kill the noise since this conversation.
Yeah, definitely. Man, the distractions are everywhere, man.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
A couple of the ways that I've tried to kill the noise in my own life. I mean, one of them is like, hey, I get my phone out of my room these days. I don't know if you do this.
I love it.
My phone is no longer in my room. And when I really, really need to focus, like my phone, I was watching some other podcast or book, I can't remember. It was like, hey, keep your phone 10 feet away from your workspace. Because like how easy, and to be fair, I have a Mac. So like if I'm using this thing right here, like it doesn't necessarily matter. But I do know that I also use the focus modes on there. So if you try and text me.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble focusing because when you said Mac, it made me think of the competition between us and Shane Kuyper.
That's correct. I know. We took a picture because we were golfing on Friday and I had a Kirkland glove and he had what's called I don't know. Whatever Walmart's Sam's Club version is of it.
Great value.
I got to put it up.
He had a great value.
That's what I thought of, but it wasn't called that. It was like Maker's Mark, but I know it's not that. It's Maker's Club or something. Marcus Club. I don't know.
You're an alcoholic.
Gosh. No, that's what I thought. I thought of the whiskey and I was like, why does Maker's Mark have a glove? And he's like, no, this is Sam's Club.
Dude, that is amazing. Okay, we're going to get back to that. Right now we're going to kill the noise.
Yeah.
So okay.
Yeah.
You have to use the silence function on your MacBook.
I do.
In effort to just help yourself stay productive on the immediate mission, right? Yeah. And on that which is next.
And I've struggled with it because here's what happens too is like I'll get emails and my emails are not set up in that way. But if I don't time block my time,
agreed,
then like my focus is all over the place. So I'll start on a project and then I'll end up responding to an email doing this. And I think that I am multitasking and being super productive. But by the end of that hour, 2 hours day, I'm like, where the heck did my day go?
Yep. Yeah, and your brain's fried too.
And my brain's fried. And I literally was listening to, I'll try and figure it out and see if I can put it in the show notes. It was another podcast talking about how some people brag about being multitaskers. And the whole point of this section of the episode was like, our brains don't do that.
Yeah.
Like our brains actually
switch really fast.
We just switch really fast. So I think Josiah's point was fantastic. Like kill the noise, focus on the one thing, get that critical mission that's right in front of you and give all your attention to that. I think people will be really surprised if you can do that for a little bit, how exponentially successful you might be in that task.
So our biggest obstacle to focus is actually not the external distractions. It's not the pings. It's not the dog in the background or the kid crying or whatever. It's actually
me.
Ourselves. It's me.
Yeah.
It's you.
It's me.
It's inside that we have such a difficult time killing the noise. Yeah. And so let's move into how this relates to perfectionism, because I thought, that was one of the coolest parts of the conversation. We went from kind of talking about focus into perfectionism and self-talk.
Yeah.
And I see those things as being really tied in to each other.
Yeah.
And I think Josiah's book, as well as the conversation, shed a lot of light on that for me.
Yeah. Yeah, perfectionism, at least for me, had either a super great, you're either a perfectionist and that's like, God, that person is such a good employee because they're a perfectionist, or it's a terrible thing. Like, I feel like in 2024, it's kind of like this word that we're like, ooh, you shouldn't be a perfectionist. And he made the idea that like perfectionism is not a bad thing if it's done in a healthy light.
Yes. He had this idea of you can be a healthy perfectionist, an unhealthy perfectionist, and a non-perfectionist.
Right.
Right. which I didn't have those categories going into that.
I didn't either. Right. It was, for me, it was probably like unhealthy perfectionism or the person that I can never become, which is the healthy. I wouldn't have even called it healthy perfectionist. I would have just called it that person, that person that I look at and like, they always seem to achieve super high. But he kind of said, and this is what really stuck with me, is like, hey, actually in healthy perfectionism, we can almost get rid of the idea of like failure and that being a bad thing. Because the perfectionism, me needing it to be perfect, if I'm in an unhealthy way, right, that can actually keep me stuck. That's right. And I felt that. I've been like, oh, this has got to be the perfect email. This has got to be the perfect, perfect project, perfect whatever, rather than getting it out there and having the overall goal be strive high, but kind of taking out the bottom of like, okay, but I can't fail.
And so, perfectionism becomes unhealthy when I can't release the perceptions that other people hold about my performance.
Right.
So healthy perfectionism means that I strive high. Yeah. I really care about precision, accuracy, quality, all the things that characterize perfectionism. But at the same time, counterintuitively, I really don't care what anybody else thinks. And even the outcome is less important than the pursuit of the goal.
Of going after
which that totally like blew my mind.
Yeah. The only thing I'd add in there or challenge is, rather than I don't care what anybody else thinks, I only care what a selective few think, right?
That's a good distinction.
I'm going to strive high, and then I'm going to have those people that can speak into my striving. Because if I'm like, man, I'm going to not care what anybody thinks, and then I get a bunch of negative feedback from the people in my close circles, right? That may not be as healthy either. But yeah, other than that.
Good observation.
Yeah, I totally agree. You're 100% right. Like, that is it. I strive high. I'm not, like, he brought up Kobe Bryant being like, hey, I got rid of a failure.
Such a good example.
It was, and like Kobe, I mean, I don't know how healthy he was on a day-to-day basis, but like very high achiever, did really well there, right? Did good for him. And that getting rid of failure allowed him to take a whole bunch of shots that he needed to miss to make all the shots that he made. So
that's right.
I think that, it was great.
And I loved what he said about the idea that when you're a non-perfectionist, right, you don't strive high and you don't care what others think.
Yeah.
And so perhaps you have talent.
Right.
But the point that Josiah made was that while talent gets you in the door and gets you going, it oftentimes will not sustain you. You have to wrestle with this notion of striving high.
Yeah, you got to put in the work.
So that was really insightful to me.
Yeah, that's well said. That's well said.
And what was cool about that conversation is when we started to tie things into leadership, I took note and actually wrote this down so I could kind of read it verbatim. When we asked him, hey, Josiah, what is leadership to you? He said this, that leadership is a set of behaviors used to help people align their collective direction, to execute strategic plans, to continually renew an organization. But then he quickly made a caveat to that definition. He said, here's the deal, that's super generic. And there's a lot of generic definitions to leadership.
Yeah.
But words matter. So what are the three things that every leader needs in order to genuinely call him or herself a leader? And he said, that's an audience, a goal, and skills, actual skills.
Yeah.
Any thoughts or reflection on that definition of leadership? Because it's not something that we really defined in our first episode. That was really the first definition of leadership that we brought to bear to the audience.
Right. Yeah, no, I think it's great. I think it's great that he broke it down to being super specific at the end.
Mm-hmm.
That like you do need an audience, right? You got to have those people that are following you. Got to have the mission. Like that was my favorite part about him, honestly, is that like, hey, when we asked him a question, boom, he knew exactly.
Dude, he was intense. Yes.
He brought his A game.
Yes, indeed.
But no, I mean, I have been fascinated by everyone's definition of leadership, because he is right. Like, they are all, like, all of them are different. They are all words. They all do matter, right? That those things are all true. So, which that is completely different than like Shane's idea of leadership.
Oh, totally. Right. Totally. And there's truth in both of them.
Yeah, there's truth.
There's probably strengths and weaknesses in both of them.
Yeah, definitely. And I'd love to even jump into Shane's just for a minute. And I think we can even pocket a bunch of Shane's reflections too, to circle back on that in our next one, like because we'll do another one here to reflect, and then we can just do 1 and 2 for the next one there. But because his definition was a fairly, the audience didn't necessarily matter, right? Mm-hmm. What was Shane's exact definition? You said it earlier here. Where'd it go? Oh, wrote it down.
Yeah. So Shane's definition was, if I can make the person feel next to me, feel seen and heard and understood, that's leadership. Yeah. And then he made a distinction. Look, it's not about me moving them to any goal. It's not about achieving some kind of a vision. It's about empathy. Yeah. And it's about being with someone. Yeah. So very different than a bit of the structured kind of formality that Josiah brought to the table.
Yeah. And once again, you can feel the tension. So that's right. We've got one that is more audience vision driven and one that is more people.
Well, literally empathy. In Josiah's definition of leadership, he uses the word skills. If you go back to the episode, he's like, skills, talents, gifts, abilities. Yep. Like, you got to have it if you're going to lead. Right. And Shane's like, no. We're just here together.
And there's different ways to lead, right? There's different audiences to lead too. Like, yes, if I'm going to lead a business, those things are all true. If I'm going to lead maybe my neighbor or my community, like maybe I don't need that as much, but I do think at the same time, Shane's definition is really important. The ability to empathize with somebody, to be with them, to have them be understood. It's really empowering for them to be the best them that they're going to be.
So I think it's interesting too, when we think about the healthy competitor and some of the message that Shane brought to episode 3.
Sure.
One of the big pieces of context that his definition of leadership arises out of is this idea of a window of tolerance. So are you familiar with it enough to kind of rehearse for the audience, like what the window of tolerance is and why it's so important for us to have that awareness?
Yeah. I mean, I like the window of tolerance. It's really a tool. I like when our guests give us tools to be able to work with.
Totally.
I kind of picture a, handyman going out and he's got all of his different tools on the wall, and then you can grab this one and pull it off. But they're also only as helpful as we're actually going to use them. I think oftentimes they're like, that's really cool. And then we forget and we don't use them. I actually use this multiple times. So the window of tolerance is kind of the idea that, hey, there is this sweet spot where I can kind of rest in who I am, be safe, and operate at my highest ability. And if I go outside of that window, if I am hyper aroused, right, and I go on top, so I'm kind of like angry, upset, some of those moments when you can feel your heart really racing, I'm not going to be able to make as critical decisions well. I'm not going to operate. I'm not going to function as well. And then same thing if you're hypo aroused. Did I say that right? Hyper and hypo. Yeah.
That's right.
Going below that window, right? And maybe I'm depressed or lethargic. I'm not operating as my best self. And the tool is really to help us go, okay, hey, can I identify, we get triggered every day, above or below. Either I'm feeling depressed, anxious, whatever it is, or maybe I'm angry, upset, or just running Mach 2. Like, am I in a state where I can actually make really sound choices and decisions that are going to align with me, my team, and the me I want to be?
That's good.
I thought that tool was fantastic.
I did too.
And the practical application for me is like, I've realized multiple times where I'm like, okay, I'm out of that window right now. And
I didn't have that language before our conversation. Yeah. I've been applying it to marriage, parenting, business development. Yeah. Sometimes I'll be on a call and I'm like, there's money on the table on this call.
Sure.
And I need to be diligent to try to close a client. Right. And there's a lot of anxiety there. There's a lot of stress there.
Yeah.
Right. So I know, okay, either I'm hyper aroused on, like, I need to calm myself down. And I think we should highlight some of those tools that he gave us to, help. Or like, dude, the last thing I want to do is get on a business development call right now. Like, I probably need to just go on a walk.
Yeah.
Probably need to call a friend, maybe call you, maybe call another friend. Maybe I need to listen to some music, just get some sun on my skin, move my feet a little bit, and just really take some 15, 20 minutes to refresh. So I can go, okay, I'm ready to make that call now,
right,
and get after it.
Yeah. It gives us language and a framework to understand what's going on when I don't want to do one of those phone calls, when I'm not in a good mood, when I am feeling like kind of out of control, and then use the tool and then apply some of the other practices and principles. Like he gave us box breathing, right?
Yeah, that was a fun exercise to do together.
Yeah. Yeah, correct. And that was also helpful because we realized when we're drawing that out that our listeners that are not watching have no idea what we're doing. So
yeah, guys,
Shane,
YouTube.
yeah,
I'm telling you, it's the
YouTube,
best
that's
way
the way.
to get the daily leader.
So Shane literally just drew a box with his fingers, and he would go 4 seconds one way, and we'd take a breath in, and we'd hold it, and then 4 seconds another way, and we'd complete that box, and go, in 4, out 4, or in 4, hold 4, out 4, hold 4, and you can kind of do that, and you can feel yourself like breathing. There's a ton of great breathing techniques out there.
Right.
Andrew Huberman has a bunch of them, that he talks about on his show.
Can we just be Andrew Huberman?
I would love to.
The muscles, the tats, the brains,
the voice.
He's got it all.
He does. The brain. Yeah. It's tough to beat. It's tough to beat. So, I mean, Shane really did give us a bunch of, like, there's so much to unpack there.
We're going to get Andrew Huberman on the Daily Leader.
I'd love that. He's leading.
You guys check it out.
Yeah.
All right.
Mark our words. What's today? February.
You give us this time next year. Yep. If we don't have Andrew Huberman
by February 19th,
you write a comment and you say, guys, what's going on?
Yeah.
All right. Give us 1 year. So, Huberman on the pod.
Brad, this is my thought, because we can keep going here for a bunch. And
yeah. Let's land the plane.
Yeah. Let's land. We'll the lounge is coming in for it's kind of like we're flying on Air Force One, and it's coming on down. Gonna land in the lounge. It's kind of hard. That's a bunch of L's.
Nope. We're cutting that out.
But
Jesus, we're going to cut that.
But with that, we're not going to cut that, Brad. It's okay to make mistakes. I don't have to be perfect. That's the nice thing.
Man, there's so much more to talk about on these 3 episodes.
What I realized is
it's hard to land the plane.
Well, we literally were like, okay, let's shoot for like 25 to 30 minutes. And we are, to be fair, we're both blabberers. Like, we talk a lot.
I know. People are going to hate this episode.
They're going to hate it. But if they do end up liking it,
please like, subscribe, and share.
Yep. We really appreciate everybody coming on the Daily
100%.
Leader. 100%. Yeah, 100%. And we'll be back for another segment of the lounge here soon.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Yep.
Go check out those episodes on YouTube.
Wow, wow.